How is life for children in the digital age? A brand new report published in the last 2 weeks by the OECD. I don't even know what it stands for. The Organisation for Economic and Cooperative Development or something like that. OECD have published this big report all about what is going on with our kids and screens. You already know before we start the pod that it's going to be bad, but how bad? The stats are going to blow your mind. Hello and welcome to the Happy Families podcast, real parenting solutions every day on Australia's most downloaded parenting podcast. We are Justin and Kylie Coulson. Kylie, you've got the stats in front of you. Hit me with them. These are, I don't want to be one of those, oh my goodness, the sky is falling kind of people. But when I look at these...
You don't want to be a henny penny.
Correct. But I feel like if you're a parent and your child has a screen in their hand, you just need to know that this is going on. Statistic number one.
Australian teenagers are spending 49 hours per week on screens.
Okay.
That's including schoolwork.
Yeah, so that's 7 hours a day that they're staring at a screen. Once you take sleep out as well, let's say 10 hours, that's 17 hours of the day is gone for sleep. You've got travel and all that sort of stuff. There's not a lot left for life. 7 hours per day, but that's on average. What was the sort of higher end?
12% are spending over 80 hours per week. That's more than a full-time job.
Well, it's double. A full-time job is 40 hours a week. So more than 1 in 10, 12%, 80 hours a week on a screen. You do the maths, it's more than 10 hours per day. In fact, hang on, maths. It's more than 11 hours per day. More than 11 hours per day on a screen, 12% of kids there. There's also some stats around how many kids at a young age own smartphones.
This is blowing my mind. 70% of 10-year-olds already have their own smartphone.
Yeah, so the OECD uses the word own. Let's be really clear. No 10-year-old owns a smartphone. And if they do, I don't want to parent shame, but kids shouldn't be owning smartphones, especially at the age of 10.
I'm actually speechless because we talk about screens and the challenges that we're experiencing on a weekly basis on the podcast. Yeah. So this is not unknown.
So maybe only 30% of Australian parents listen to what we're saying. I don't know. 70% of 10-year-olds are already on a smartphone. There are two other important stats that we've pulled out of here that we think just need highlighting, flashing lights.
Nearly 1 in 5 teens spends more time gaming than studying at school.
Yep. Okay.
And the last one is 60% of Australian girls report severe distress from cyberbullying.
So just pause on that. That needs a moment to breathe. 60%, nearly 2/3 of Australian girls, they're not just reporting cyberbullying, they're reporting, quote unquote,
severe distress.
Severe distress.
And we're amongst the highest globally.
Yeah, I think the only people who beat us I think we're number two. I think we're number 2 with the US being just in front of us. And this is not one of those lists that you want to be on the top of. So following on from yesterday's discussion with Scott Novus, the former Disney vice president, where we previewed Saturday's major interview about kids and gaming, I just want to reinforce a couple of things that he said and that we touched on yesterday or that will be touched on Saturday. And I'll whiz through this really quickly because we need to know it, but we don't need to dwell on it because we talk about it all the time. Number one, games and social media are engineered with dopamine release triggers and unpredictable rewards. You get that variable ratio reward to sustain engagement and get you and your kids hooked. That's literally what they're trying to do. They're maximizing engagement, maximizing addiction, wanting to make our children, who are the most vulnerable, drawn in for prolonged use. We know from the OECD data, 10% of teens are reporting problematic social media use. That's up from 7% 5 years ago. It's a 3% increase, not massive, but at a problematic level, 10%. 17% of 15-year-olds feel anxious when they're without their devices. I think that that's an underestimate. I know that when I talk to adults, pretty much 70% of adults feel quite anxious without their devices. I know it happens to me from time to time. I love it and then I hate it. And boys are, consistent with previous years' research, much more prone to gaming disorders and girls to social media addiction.
In some ways, I'm really blown away that we're still having to have this conversation. But the reality is screen usage is having such a massive negative impact on our kids' lives.
Okay, so I'll go through the things that we talk about all the time. You can add any that you think that I've missed. We usually talk about excessive use being linked to depression, anxiety, loneliness, academic struggles, sleep deprivation, lack of exercise, physical activity, that kind of stuff. Then there's the content issues, what your children are actually being exposed to, which I think are probably the biggest things. They're the ones that jump out at me immediately because we talk about them all the time.
Pornography, violence and sextortion.
Yep. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, we had Julianne McGrant talking about sextortion not long ago and teenage boys being being taken for an absolute ride and sometimes losing their lives because of this stuff. We know that our Australian kids are among the most distressed because of online harassment. There's genuine damage, and that's stuff that's happening to our kids based on what's happening online. I think there's one more thing that we really need to highlight here as a genuine concern, a big problem that comes from this, and it's that family relationships blow up. Like, there's so many wars in bedroom doorways and in living rooms where parents are walking in and saying, get off your screen. I've had enough of this. We're done. There's a guy called Marshall Rosenberg. I've got his book. In fact, I'm touching it right now, right above my head on my bookshelf. It's called Nonviolent Communication by Marshall Rosenberg. He died a few years ago, but he's pretty, what's the word for it? He's pretty dry. He's not the most inspiring guy to listen to or read, but his models and his ideas are just brilliant. And what we're describing here, this family conflict, he would call that violent communication. And he's got a model of how we can communicate non-violently around challenging things. We might do a podcast episode about it sometime in the next couple of weeks. It's really, really good stuff. So after the break, I want to share a couple of things. First off, 4 uncomfortable truths about what the OECD have discovered about children and their screen use, and then just a handful of directives, a handful of really simple things that you can do based on your child's age to protect them from the disaster that the screen world invites into their lives. Okay, so 4 uncomfortable truths that this OECD report, How's Life for Children in the Digital Age, brings up for me that I think every parent needs to know. There's a lot here. I want to go through it quickly. Kylie, I haven't really broken this down for you, but I've given you the 4 headlines. So you walk me through it and I'll add the colour and flavour that needs to be there.
So your child's real world problems predict their digital problems.
Yeah, so basically if your child is having real world problems, they're likely to have digital problems, and there's going to be a correlation between the two. So what you'll often find is that if your child is not doing well in the real world around physical activity or relationships, or if things are bad in the family, guess what? They're at greater risk of digital addiction, right? Because they turn to the screens because they're not doing well. The OECD found that kids with behavioural issues, kids with low levels of resilience and psychological well-being are the most vulnerable. They found this number grabbed me. Nearly half of all teens, 46% of teens, are using social media to get away from the negative feelings. So they're not addicted to screens as much as they're just saying, I don't like my reality, and the screen gives me the escape. It supports my basic psychological needs in ways that the analog world can't.
But the crazy thing is they get online and then they find themselves spiraling in this world of competition and comparison, and they can never meet up to the standards that they're seeing. The
belief that the perfectible life is out there, and it's devastating. And the more time they spend online, the more everything else deteriorates as well.
Number 2, most parents are fighting the wrong war.
Yeah, so I want to speak directly to parents who are trying to have these violent conversations. And I use the word violence really, really intentionally here. I'm not suggesting that parents are, quote unquote, violent physically. But when we say things like, that's it, I've had enough, you've got 5 minutes to go and then I'm switching it off. There's a threat, okay? And the threat to a child can feel, it's a really triggering word, but it can feel violent to them. I'm going back to the Marshall Rosenberg thing. How can we communicate in a non-violent way? When we're imposing time limits in a punitive way, we're fighting the wrong war. I think what works better than time restrictions is making sure that we're talking about content. Time restrictions matter too, but content is the bigger issue for me. Children who come from neglectful or authoritarian homes show much higher rates of gaming disorder and other challenges online. So again, this is a parenting issue. Either the parents don't care, that's the neglectful side, or they're pushing too hard. Force creates resistance. That's where we see the really big problems. Essentially, your parenting style matters more than all the filters and all the controls that you can put on it. Autonomy support. Autonomy support is what we talk about on this pod all the time. Nonviolent communication, problem solving for discipline rather than punishment for discipline, helping kids to get there. That's the second really, really uncomfortable truth. Parenting is a big part of this problem.
So you've been using this big word. You've been talking about the bi-directional trap.
I can't help it.
You sound so academic.
It's the academic in me. I'm a scientist. I'm a researcher. What do you want me to do?
Can you just break it down for the average mum and dad?
Really simple. Poor mental health leads to problematic digital use. Problematic digital use worsens mental health. Bidirectional means it goes both ways. Okay, so if you've got one problem, that facilitates and builds the other problem. But once you've got that other problem, it also builds the initial problem that you had. It's kind of like parental control and anxiety. Like as a parent, when you start to get really, really anxious about your child, you become more controlling. And the more controlling you are, the more you feel anxious when your child's doing anything that is concerning for you. And so you get more controlling. It's like this never-ending spiral, this loop that keeps on going. Fundamentally, kids being on devices, especially around social media, is going to give you this temporary relief from, let's say, loneliness, but it's going to increase negative emotions the next day. The data actually shows this. There's this temporal delay so that what you're doing today impacts how you're feeling tomorrow. And when kids have a really big day, like 11 hours on social media, scrolling, just doom scrolling, right? And trying to imagine how their life can be as good as everyone else's because it's clearly on the screen, everyone else is having the best time ever. Oh my goodness, it's so hard. And what the OECD report also showed in this bidirectional trap essentially is that kids turn to online spaces when their family and their other analog relationships are failing them. Like real world relationships not working, go online. But those relationships are hollow imitations of what a real relationship needs to be for the most part. Now, are there supportive communities that can make a difference and help? Yeah, of course there are, but that's really what we're dealing with.
And number 4, the parent hypocrisy problem.
I'm just going to call it. Parents' own modelling, parents' own device usage interferes with parenting, makes parents distracted, and it creates more conflict. And the kids don't want to listen to you because you're getting it wrong. So I just think what we're doing...
So you're not talking about parents owning it. You're talking about their specific interactions with their screens.
Correct, absolutely. And the OECD report, I'm not saying it, the OECD report is showing it. The kids are saying my parents are on the devices all the time, it creates conflict between us, but also they're telling me to get off, but they don't get off. Like, what's their screen time like? And this is part of the problem. We're modelling it, we're normalising it. Now kids are saying, well, if you can do it, I can do it too. It doesn't seem fair, it doesn't make sense.
So if we find ourselves in this rat race of struggling to communicate in non-violent ways with our kids when it comes to screens, how can we help parents navigate this space?
Like I said, I think that we need to have a conversation about non-violent communication on the pod in a couple of weeks' time when we've got some space in there for it. It's really, really great stuff. And now that I've put my hand on the book, it's kind of making me want to pull it down and read it and go to all of my highlighted bits and pieces. So we will do that. I think it'll be a great podcast episode. In the meantime, what I really want to emphasize is just a couple of really simple things for each age group. So if your kids are under about the age of, I'm going to say 7 or 8, first of all, either be present during screen time or don't allow it. Co-engage or cut it off. Now, that sounds really, really harsh. I know that every now and again you want to be able to do a poo without the kids coming into the toilet. I'm sorry for being gross, but sometimes you just want to go to the toilet in peace. So I get that. I'm not hardcore on this, but to the extent that you can, be present during screen time or don't allow it. Second thing I would say about cocooning these early years up to about the age of 8 is bedrooms are sacred, no devices in bedrooms, and you've got to model that as much as the kids. And there is a third thing that I quickly want to add, and that is you want to minimize the time that they're spending on games and things that basically turn devices into gambling for kids. This is where the compelling compulsive use comes in, and this is where they start to get hooked at the earliest ages. We need to keep them away from that as long as possible. I just think the best thing for kids, if you're going to stick them in front of a screen, is ABC Kids. Let them watch some Bluey. That works for me best.
I've got bum worms.
Good grief. I recently just saw a small reel of a podcast that Jonathan Haidt did, and he was talking specifically about the fact that watching a movie with your child is better than all of these short little reels and things like that, more times than not.
Yeah, because you're not getting that instant dopamine hit that keeps you addicted, right?
Yeah, well, and you've got characters in there who, kind of grow and they've got morals and standards.
You develop empathy, it teaches values. Yeah, absolutely.
And often you'll watch a movie together. So you've got that, kind of physical connection.
And a movie has an endpoint.
It does.
Whereas the YouTube algorithm will just keep on feeding you material for eternity. Let's talk about middle childhood. Just 3 quick things that I want to hit here. First of all, you're cocooning when kids are younger. As the kids get older, you're now starting to pre-arm, but you're building fortresses for them. So I'm not huge on family media plans. I don't think they work particularly well for older kids, but for younger kids, and I'm talking like 8 to 12-year-olds, this is actually an opportunity where you still have a fairly high level of cooperative control. That is, you can work things out together, but as the parent, you do get to step in and say, I'm in charge and we've agreed on this, so we're going to make sure it happens. Like, you can really do this with younger kids. So work out what works for us, what doesn't, and stick to it, including parents. Second thing, I've emphasized this already, but briefly, monitor what they see. Focus on that probably more than how long they're watching it. How long they're watching it matters as well, so it doesn't displace things that matter. But the content is such a thing here. And I just reckon at this age, they're starting to develop independence. Invest in the offline world, physical activities, friendships, getting outside. Nature is fuel for the soul. All this sort of stuff is armor against digital harm.
What about our teenagers?
Just three things. We're moving into autonomy support. This is where we really have to pick our battles and we literally say, okay, what do we need to work on? Just remember, the stricter you are, like, rules without relationship lead to rebellion. It's about autonomy support. Get the relationship right, problem solve together. That's where you really want to go. If there are any real world problems, address those, like the family stress. That's just going to exacerbate the conflict over screens. So if there are any mental health issues, if there's any social struggles, you really want to work on that. And I keep on coming back to this. As parents, we have got to model things ruthlessly. We've got to be good examples ourselves, or we simply cannot ask our children to be ruthless with their own screen usage. You can't lift someone up if you're underneath them. You've got to stand on higher ground.
And go camping.
Yes.
Just go camping.
Yeah, get off the grid. It's so good for you. All right, that is the OECD report. I know most people aren't going to read it. We will link to it in the show notes. It's 180 pages of single-space print. Like, there's so much there. But if you're interested in it, it's called How's Life for Children in the Digital Age. I actually recommend it. I reckon there's some really good content there that we do as parents want to be across. Bottom line, let's wrap this up. Bottom line, the responsibility for what's going on in your kids' digital lives, fundamentally it rests with you. It shouldn't, but it does. We've got to wait for the tech companies to stop exploiting our kids. Hate to say it, never going to happen. We need to wait for our politicians to provide the legislation that we need to protect our kids. It's never going to happen. I'm skeptical, because if they do, the tech companies will get exploitative and find other ways to get them out of office. I just don't believe that it's going to happen. So strong offline foundations are your best defense. That's what we need to build. Hope you've loved the pod. A little bit longer than normal. Such an important topic, and so many families are struggling with it, which is why we've spent the time on it. The Happy Families podcast is produced by Justin Rulon from Bridge Media. For more info and more resources about this conversation, got a couple of great webinars in the Happy Families shop. Go to happyfamilies.com.au or pick up a copy of my book, The Parenting Revolution, because that's what we really need to get this right.